Aha! Hello and good day, everybody. It is I, Professor Quibblefingers, 13th Earl of that place in Wales which has 58 letters in its name, inventor of the hydrogen peroxide-powered rocket trousers, and man voted most likely to solve world hunger and then not tell anyone the solution. And welcome back. Unfortunately, I have currently moved out of my manor. My wife is extremely upset with me. Apparently we've gone from using the buckets to processing vases to catch the water coming in from the roof. Roger, the gardener, he is away on vacation. It would seem that he has gone to visit relatives down in one of those shires where they have an accent that sounds like straw and a good deal of the letter R in it. If you've ever watched a traditional pirate movie, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And as for Miss Lakshmana, well, let's not get into that. Anyway, you may wonder where I've been the last few weeks. I apologise for not uploading recently. It's been rather a difficult few, but I'm pleased to say that I am back. And I wanted to talk to you about something rather interesting. You see, I've been away on a short expedition to a wonderful place known as Dorset. Now, for those of you who don't know where Dorset is, it's that little bit down on the south coast of England, which is full of smugglers, cheese, and rather fine ale named after an otter, I think. Yes, the Ottery Ale. And during that time, I decided to take a trip down the romantic and rather mysterious Jurassic Coast. And during that time, I found many wonderful, interesting things. In fact, my dining room table, which, I'm currently staying at Miss Mia's guild house, and, well, let's just say that my personal table over in the far right-hand corner of the building is currently covered in about 50 pounds of rocks, each of which contains the bone of mostly shells of 200 million year old dead things. Now, you might wonder why I have the shells of 200 million year old dead things, and that is because I've spent several days down on what we call the Jurassic Coast. It's a fascinating piece of history, and I thought I might as well tell you about it and show you a little what I found. So, sit back, relax. I'll have some of the guild's strongest alcohol brought to us, and let us begin. Now then, our story begins at the end of what is known as the Permian period. Now, the Permian is one of the lesser known periods of time, about 50 million years before the evolution of things like dinosaurs, and it was ruled over by primitive mammal ancestors mostly. Giant turtle beasts, a saber-tooth wolf lizard monster called a gorgonopsid. Some of them were pretty damn scary. And then it all came to a sudden, violent end. Now, you see, during the Permian, all of the world's land masses came together into what became known as a supercontinent. This was Pangaea, and it wasn't exactly the nicest place to live, even at the best of times. The entire place was basically one giant desert, surrounded by mountains, and in turn it was surrounded by a single massive ocean, so big that the hurricanes coming off of it had 500-mile-an-hour winds. Not exactly what I would call the most pleasant place to live. And to make things worse, there was a rather unpleasant geological event. In the area that would one day become known as Siberia, there was a massive volcanic eruption, what's known as a flood basalt eruption. To put in perspective just how big this was, imagine a crack forming in the earth about 1,000 miles long, a mile wide, and going so deep that it hits the mantle. And then imagine that this volcanic eruption now begins spewing molten rock, lava, and toxic gas and dust for about 1,000,000 years. Now, think about what humanity has done in a few thousand years with global warming, and then compare that to a 1,000,000-year long supervolcanic eruption. Yeah, you're beginning to see why this could be a problem. Certain parts of the planet became so hot that it could not support life anymore. Bacteria would die. Anything made of meat would instantly cook on contact with the rock. The surface temperature at the poles reached nearly 50 degrees Celsius and 70 odd at the equator. If it had got much hotter, the planet would have died. As it is, it almost did. The sea turned into a vat of boiling acid, the land cooked, and I forget the exact numbers, but somewhere in the region of... bear with me. Yes, here we are. 70% of all land species and 81% of all marine species. So, basically, everything was wiped out. And not only was it just being wiped out, 99% of all the individuals of the surviving species were wiped out as well. This event, the Permian-Triassic extinction, became known as the Great Dying, and with the possible exception of the Great Oxidation event, no, we don't talk about that one, it is the single most devastating thing in Earth's history. The dinosaur extinction? Fuck that. Seriously, that is child's play compared to this. And it is from that a new world was formed. It took about 50 million years for the world to begin recovering. And this is the period known as the Triassic period. It did eventually get better. Oxygen levels reached breathable points again, the temperature cooled, and the first groups that you might recognise from prehistory started to appear. The first pterosaurs, the first crocodiles, the first dinosaurs, and things were beginning to look better. Until it didn't. It was about 201 million years ago that a second major extinction event occurred. This was the Triassic to Jurassic extinction, and was probably caused by the exact opposite thing to what caused the Permian-Triassic extinction. While Permian-Triassic was all the continents coming together and forming one massive volcanic strip, Triassic to Jurassic was the continents finally breaking apart, forming individual landmasses once more, but in the same way, it killed a lot of life thanks to volcanic activity. Exact numbers are tricky to say, but maybe 50% of species were wiped out. And it's from this second mass extinction that all of the most famous prehistoric animals have eventually appeared. But there is something very interesting. You see, there is one spot in southern England where this is recorded in extreme detail. That place is Lyme Regis. In the year 1811, there was a young lady known as Mary Anning. She was an amateur geologist and fossil collector who lived along the southern coast of England at a town called Lyme Regis. During her expeditions down the beach, she found the bones of a most extraordinary animal. It was essentially like a dolphin, but far more unusual. It had long, razor-sharp teeth. It was considerably larger, and with a long, beaked snout. She became the first person to ever correctly identify the bones of an ichthyosaur, a giant prehistoric reptile. She would later go on to identify several important creatures, including two nearly complete plesiosaurs, the first pterosaur, the flying reptiles, which was found outside of Germany, and a number of other fascinating creatures. With my interest in geology and naturalism, I thought it prudent to follow in her footsteps, and so, over the last few weeks, I've spent some time in Lyme Regis, searching, collecting, and cataloguing fossils. And I must say I've been extremely successful. Well, you can see here just how many I found. Now, Lyme Regis sits upon the Blue Lias Formation, an exceptionally fossil-dense part of the world, stretching hundreds of miles across the southern coast of England. You can literally walk from one end of the beach to the other and be guaranteed to find something from something dead. And the part I visited is especially interesting. It sits right at the end of the Triassic into the early Jurassic, almost exactly 200 million years ago. As you can see, I have found many fascinating creatures here. And, well, I thought it was about time I shared what I found with you guys. Now, in my experience, the best way to find fossils down here is not to follow the more famous Charmouth Beach. Sure, you'll find the occasional very well-preserved thing, but this area is so popular that everyone goes there, and I do mean everyone. That area has been completely picked clean. So, if you're going to do a fossil hunt in the Lyme Regis area, here's what I suggest. Follow the hill all the way down, following the River Lyme, and eventually you will reach the seafront. There, you would want to make a right-hand turn and follow the Lyme Regis front beach. From there, head all the way down, past the harbour and the Lyme Bay Aquarium, where you'll reach Monmouth Beach, around Chipple Bay. There, you'll see the dramatic cliffs start to emerge on your right-hand side. It is, quite a beautiful place in its own way, if somewhat bleak. And you have to be especially careful of the tides, because they come right up to the base of the cliffs. And the last thing you want to be doing is be out fossil hunting along this strip of stone and end up underwater. Not something I recommend. In any case, you will eventually head down this beach, where you will start to notice the various layers of rock above you. This is the Blue Lias Formation, a collection of limestone boulders with mudstone and shale mixed in between. 200 million years ago, this was a seabed, located at the edge of a small piece of desert. Now, the continent of Pangaea was beginning to break up, and with its breakup, the land was becoming slightly more habitable. However, there was still several hundred feet of water above us. It is in this water that much of the Jurassic Coast's most interesting life lived. It is here that you will find an enormous collection of ammonites. Now, ammonites are fascinating creatures. Essentially, a big squid wrapped up in a hard segmented shell. If anyone's seen a nautilus, they're not dissimilar, although ammonites are far more diverse and, in my opinion, far more interesting. They range in size from tiny little things about the size of a pea to giant ones, some of them growing 6 to 10 feet across and weighing nearly a ton. Now, Lyme Regis is particularly famous for this, as located here is what is known as the Ammonite Graveyard. Now, I couldn't say exactly what caused this. I have theories. Most likely either an algal bloom which wiped out hundreds of ammonites all at once, causing all of their shells to form almost a hard carpet. Another option might be perhaps sandstorms blowing in off the coast, similar to, well, basically burying everything alive down there. It's a rather depressing thought. Whatever it may be, it has created a carpet of ancient shells that stretches for hundreds of yards in every direction. It is fantastic to see. Each one of them is an exceptionally well-preserved ammonite. And as you start looking around, you realise there are far more of them than you ever expected, in far more different kinds of stone. My leading theory is, based on the build-up of pyrite around many of them, the fact that so many different ammonites died apparently at different times, and, well, various other things. Sand would blow in off the coast and would bury many things alive, but with that sand it would bring iron. This iron would cause an algal bloom which would turn this patch of sea poisonous, and it is this poison that would cause the ammonite carpets to form, or, as they're officially known, the ammonite death slates. This went on for millions of years. We are talking generations and different species. As you can see, here is a selection of them. They range in size from tiny itty bitty little things to, well, some of them you could collect enough ammonites to put together a dining room table. My favourite ones are these, which are roughly the size of a human foot. There is actually a secret method to finding fossils at Lyme Regis. What you need to do is head out past this big headland. And most people, they don't get this far. They head down this little patch here to the Ammonite Graveyard, turn around and go back. But I find you go further down here, you'll find more and more interesting stuff. In fact, there is something of a truism in this fossil site. It isn't that you're not going to find anything, it's that you're going to have to decide what you are capable of taking back with you. As many of the pieces you find will be so big that you're going to need a small crane, a team, and a car to move. I wish you all the best of luck with that. You can bring a hammer. I have had some success breaking open large mudstone boulders and finding crushed ammonite impressions, but if you're just down there for a day and you just fancy seeing what you can do, just walk along the seafront. Eventually you'll find things worth taking back with you, especially if you have someone with you who knows what to look for. There are many thousands of fossils. And it's not just ammonites. Dimorphodon, a large flying reptile, was found here. There are known to be fossil bones, and even a dinosaur, I want to say a Skeletosaurus? My pronunciation is probably all over the place there. But it is a small armoured dinosaur similar to a Stegosaur or Ankylosaur from right at the beginning of the Jurassic period. And if you keep on going to the end of the fossil-bearing cliffs, you might find something absolutely fascinating. I was about ready to head back. It was rather a cold day, wet, gloomy, and the tide was not being particularly friendly, when I noticed this lying among the rocks. Now, to most people, this doesn't look like anything amazing. A couple of bits of stone perhaps held together with concrete. But if you know what you're looking at, this is rather cool. These two are the bones, specifically the neck vertebrae, of a pliosaur. Now, your pliosaur is an absolutely outstanding creature. It's basically a crocodile which changed its legs into giant flippers so that it could swim through the ocean. They are some of the most incredible creatures that ever lived. Massive jaws, sharp teeth, fast and dangerous. Now this one is not particularly outstanding. It is most likely from a creature maybe 3 or 4 meters, 10 to 12 foot long. So maybe the size of a large shark or a big bull alligator. But it is still pretty cool to have found this just lying there on the beach. And I take particular pride because I know what something like this will eventually evolve into. Well, some of you may have heard of Predator X and its relatives, the giant carnivores that once roamed the Jurassic oceans. They are deadly monsters. And just to give you an idea, allow me to show you perhaps the most famous introduction a pliosaur has ever had.
The most fearsome predator of the Jurassic is watching his prey. Peering through the water, the carnivore fixes on his unwary victim, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.
Quite something, wasn't it? And with that, I think I will be leaving you for now. Thank you all very much for watching. If you'd like to see any more of my rather extensive collection, let me know and I will see what I can do. Until then, my friends, cheerio.